Hi guys! Welcome back to another episode of our life seasons where we talk about the different seasons of life and how we grow through it. So in today's episode, we're gonna be talking about fear, mainly how a little fear goes a long way. So I would say that this topic is very close to me because I am actually the reason why I came up with this podcast episode is because I have recently faced fear. I have felt fear, I have felt nerves because of what I'm currently going through. I think the life seasons that I've changed into, and also I would say like where I am right now in life is just so different from what I imagine it to be and what am used for it to be. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, I am actually currently in this transition where I started a new beginning, a new journey with Google as their trainee. And I would say that for more, of how it happened, how I actually manifested this and the whole process of it, I have a separate episode on it. So do check that out. But because of all, the manifestations, being happy about it and stuff like that, there is also another side of it, which is being afraid, having fears, having nerves, imposter syndrome that comes up. So, like I mentioned, this is just the part and parcel of life, and how, life is so balanced in a sense whereby you have your positive emotions and you have your negative emotions. So, in that episode, I focus a lot on the positive emotions, and I did not plan this out. It just happened that this episode, I'm going to be talking a little bit more of like the negative part of things and how I actually navigate through these emotions. Okay. So, I would say that I'm not sure, oh, okay, not I'm not sure. I'm sure that everyone has experienced fear in their life before, right? We are all often afraid of a lot of things. We are afraid of failure. We're afraid of how people judge us. We are afraid of the outcome. We are afraid that we might have regrets. We are afraid that we might not have the time or the opportunity or the chance to do certain things. And we're just filled with so much fear because of whatever reason that might be, right? It might be your childhood trauma, or it might be your inner child, or it might be something that you have gone through before and it wasn't the best experience and you just don't want to go through it again, right? There are so many levels of fear. And I would say that I have experienced majority of the fear like everyone else. And recently I have been afraid. I'm not afraid to say that. I have been afraid, and I have felt a lot of nerves in my system, like my emotional system, that I at one point I did not know how to handle it. I was so confused with why was all this happening when everything was supposedly looking good from the outside, right? Like I have friends that tell me that, oh, you have this like opportunity, you should be happy. As much as I know I should be happy, but there is a part of me that fears this opportunity. There is a part of me that fear that I don't do well, that I don't perform well. That is this fear of uncertainty, of the unknown, that yeah, I'm just so afraid. And I think it got to a point whereby it was so bad. I was sitting with this fear and these nerves and trying to work through it for the past 1 week. And I'm better now and navigating through this. That's why I'm having this episode. And hopefully that, to whoever that's having fear in your life right now, I hope that this episode is gonna kind of shift your perspective on how you see fear and kind of bring you through the journey on, how I actually navigate through this fear. Okay. So I would say that a lot of times we run away from fear looking at it as like a red flag, right? Like we feel that fear is bad, like we don't want to feel fear, obviously, and we just kind of we kind of want to run in the opposite direction whenever we feel fear, and that's just kind of natural instinct because we see fear as a red flag. But one thing that I came to realize is that for me to go through all these emotions, these quote unquote negative emotions of fear and nerves or uncertainty, I have sat down with myself and to really kind of discover where this is coming from, or like why would all this fear be brought up, because I honestly thought that I had overcome fear of imposter syndrome and I have gained confidence. I literally have an episode on that where I talk about confidence and how I slowly find back my confidence. But I also do mention that, growth is kind of like a lifelong journey where you constantly learn. about your emotions. You constantly learn to kind of deal with negative emotions and positive emotions, and how to, kind of change your perspective on life. And that's kind of like the journey that I'm on. So for quite some time I thought that, I was quite confident in my own abilities, and I thought that, I would not like have faced fear anytime soon or nerves anytime soon. But I was so wrong, because I was hit with fear and nerves like right smack in my face for the past 1 week. Okay, so how it happened is I have been in this traineeship program for about a month now, and of course I meet amazing people, right? But also because I meet amazing people, I started having imposter syndrome. When I was talking to the other trainees in this traineeship, I felt like they were so much better than me. Their qualifications or the experiences that they had was just so much more stacked as compared to mine. Like, coming from the fears were coming from a lot of places, right? There was imposter syndrome, from my peers. And then there was also a part where I felt like transitioning from a startup, because I have an experience in startups, but not SME or MNCs, right? And now I'm transitioning from being in a startup environment all the way to MNC. It's like, I don't know, it's just something that I felt like I couldn't take. I thought that I couldn't handle. I don't know how to handle it. That's why I start to fear, right? I don't know what to expect. I don't know what's like the outcome. And again, I'm back to trying to control my outcome and trying to control my environment, which honestly I don't have control over it, because right now I'm only going through training, and there are a lot of things that I don't know that I thought that I knew about marketing in general. And yeah, it just hits me all at once, and I felt like I was so overwhelmed with the trainings, with lessons, with just talking to peers and working in groups. I felt like, and seeing everyone's opinions and everyone's thought process, I felt like I wasn't good enough. And that was when I started to feel like, oh damn, like, okay, this imposter syndrome is real. And it kind of all, I don't know, it collates into fear and nerves. So I was constantly not being able to sleep at night, just wondering, like, what's gonna happen after this 1 year, or during this 1 year, or what's gonna happen during this whole entire on the job trading. Like, am I gonna be able to perform well? Will I be able to meet the standards of my managers? And will I be able to be on par with my peers? And it's so stressful that I have sleepless nights just wondering about and worrying about whether or not this was the right choice. I started to question a lot of things. I started to question if this was the right choice for me, if I could have just not take this opportunity. I know it sounds really silly, but trust me, this was exactly what I felt. I felt like, maybe I wasn't good enough to pick up this job. I felt like I was just lucky. I felt like they might have even made a mistake. Right? So it's really ridiculous to think about it now. But that was exactly how I felt during the past week. And it was to a point where I felt like, I was done, and I found myself spiraling into this negative spiral, and I obviously didn't want that. I want to get myself out of it. So I sat down with myself as per usual. I journaled my nerves out. I was wondering where this is coming from, like writing every single detail down. Like, details from imposter syndrome to being afraid of what's going to happen after 1 year, being afraid that I might make the wrong choice, and just really dig deeper as to where this is coming from, why would I have all these emotions. And it all boils down to like my past self. It all boils down to my inner child, because I always felt like I wasn't enough. I wasn't good enough, because like I mentioned before, I seek validation from my parents, right? And I felt like this whole opportunity wasn't enough for them to be proud of me. That's just kind of how I feel. I'm not saying this is the truth, but eventually I felt like, oh, if I'm reaching this um another stage of my life, but they are still not proud of me, then what more can I do? Right? So I start to feel a lot of this fear of like validation, and I just needed to get it out of my system. So I journaled for an hour, and I decided to talk to my mom about it, because I felt like it was good for me to be able to say all these fears out, because as I speak, I kind of know more fears, more like hidden fears that I need to uncover, and that was exactly what I needed. So throughout all this journaling and speaking to my mom, I realized one thing, and this really really important lesson is that how I have been looking at fear, and I feel like for a lot of people, how we have been looking at fear is something that is like a red flag, right? When we see fear, or when we notice fear, immediately our natural instinct is to run to the opposite direction. We run away from fear. We don't want to feel fear. We feel like, okay, it's okay, like I don't want to feel it because it's not a good emotion to feel, right? So what we do, we bottle it, we push it downwards, and we just kind of forget about it, hoping that one day we will have the courage to face fear again, or one particular thing might happen for us to forget about this fear. But it's not the truth. Like, fears can start creeping up every single time that you get triggered by it, right? And this is exactly the very good example of how fear kind of crippled into my life, back into my life again, because of all this imposter syndrome and all these root problems that I've not solved. Okay, so I would say that what I'm trying to say is that realize that fear is actually trying to help you grow. As funny as it sounds, or as weird as it sounds, fear is actually something that will help you grow. Fear means that what the universe is trying to tell you is that you're opening up your comfort zone, you're expanding your comfort zone, because every single time that you fear something, it's because you're out of your comfort zone. You're not used to certain things, you're uncertain about how things are gonna work, right? So when you are in this bubble of just being comfortable, that's why you don't fear, because you're comfortable. Fear and comfort don't come together, okay? When you're uncomfortable, fear starts to creep in. And I right now I see it as a good sign. Whenever I I still have fears in me and I still feel all these nerves, but how I see it now is so much different. I see it as, a sign from the universe that, okay, I'm expanding, I'm ready to expand, I'm ready to grow. Because every single time that this fear and this nerves gets stronger, it means that I'm getting more uncomfortable, which also means that there's more room for growth. There's more room for lessons to be learned, right? So this is kind of how, like, the mindset that I want you guys to take with you as well. Whenever you see fear, you might be fearful of something right now, right? And it might be a fear that has been haunting you for the past years or months or even weeks. It's enough, right? Because these fears are stopping you from doing the things that you need to do to grow. Because I can tell you, like, fear has stopped so many people, my friends, my mom, the people that I'm close to, the people that I know of. They will always tell you that, oh, if I wasn't as afraid, I might have, I might have started a big business. I might have started that podcast. I might have started that YouTube channel. I might have gone on to create my own content. But because I was afraid of someone else's opinion, because I was afraid of failing, because I felt like I wasn't good enough, because of imposter syndrome, then I don't want to do that. I sit back and just feel into this fear. I'm not saying that you shouldn't feel into this fear. I'm just saying that you should actually look at fear and help fear help you. Okay? You might be wondering, like, how does fear even help you? Trust me, when you allow fear to help you, things change. Because right now, this is one of the discovery that I've realized over the past week, is that I've allowed fear to help me and no longer hinder me. Because I've always looked at fear as something that is really negative, and fear is always something that will hinder me. But today, I choose to look at fear as something that's gonna push me forward. As uncomfortable as it is, as open inverted negative as people talk about fear, I look at fear and know that fear is gonna push me so much further. Fear is gonna allow me to grow so much more, just because I allow fear to do that for me. Okay, instead of allowing fear to hinder me and hold me back, I look at fear as something that pushes me forward. So I am super excited right now when I start to feel fear or start to feel nerves, right? Like, I get a little bit anxious or I get a little bit of anxiety. What I would like to do is I will always snap myself out of this mindset and be like, okay, you're ready to grow. The universe is telling you that you're ready to grow. This is a sign that you're ready to grow. So what I do is I look at, the things that are around me, the situation that I'm currently in, and ask myself what it is that I can grow from this. What is it that the universe wants me to learn from this uncertainty and this out of my comfort zone to grow more? Like, what exactly is the lesson that I need to learn here? Right now, you may not look at the lesson and be like, oh yeah, sure, that's something that I need to grow. You may look at the situation and be like, I don't know, I'm just afraid, but I don't know what I'm afraid of. And I don't know how this is gonna help me in the future, right? And that's completely fine, because it's the same situation as where I am right now, where I do not know 1 year later where I'm gonna be, or whether this opportunity was the right decision, or whether or not, like, this was the right call, or how this is gonna help me in the future, whether or not it's even gonna help me in the future. I think I start to worry a lot about this part of things which is not in my control, and I shouldn't be trying to control it, because like I mentioned, whatever that you are meant for will not pass you by, right? And this is something that I have to keep on telling myself, that what you're meant for will never pass you by. And when I know this, I know that I will never make the wrong decisions, right? Like the decision to actually head on to this traineeship head first, jump straight in whether or not I'm fearful or not, it doesn't really matter, because I'm already in this situation, and it doesn't help me to sit with these fears and allow it to hinder me. Because the day that I'm still holding on to this fear is the day that I am not growing, right? It's the day that I choose to stay in my comfort zone. Because like I mentioned, you are always very comfortable in your comfort zone, which fear doesn't have a place in your comfort zone, right? But if you look at it this way, your comfort zone right now, right, it's this small, and when you feel fear, you expand, because your comfort zone is expanding. And as you grow in life, your comfort zone gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and you feel fear more, but you know how to handle it. It's to a point whereby it's so big that your fear has literally nowhere to stay, because your fear is so small in this big comfort zone. You get what I'm trying to say? This is kind of like a visual. If you're a visual person, this is kind of like how I like to visualize it. So I would say that it definitely takes time for your body, for your mind to condition how you think of fear. But what I want you to do today is to think about one thing, just one thing that you're so afraid of, whether or not it's fear of failure, whether or not it's imposter syndrome, whether or not it's fear of how people would view you, whether or not it's fear of actually even taking action, or fear of taking responsibility, or fear of the outcome. I want you to look at this fear that you have and see why would you still have this fear, or rather, what is it, like what comfort zone are you trying to keep yourself in, right? It may be the comfort of the environment, right? Like myself, I was very comfortable in my previous job. You know, every single day it became a routine, right? I go to work, I come back home, I have my own time, I don't need to think much. But when I'm shake like when I get shaked out of this comfort zone and be put in this unknown, like everyone else, unknown is something that shakes fear up. Unknown is something that brings all your deepest, darkest fear out and about, right? And you start to realize that, oh my God, I'm starting to be afraid, because there's so much uncertainty. There's so much unknown that we try to control, but we can't, because it's unknown, right? We don't know where to start. And I would say that, like I mentioned, a good way to think of fear right now is to know that, how is this going to help you? First thing is to always tell yourself that, okay, look, I'm afraid. It's a good thing. Start thinking of it as a good thing. Start thinking of fear as a good thing, right? Delete all the things that people are telling you about fear, right? Like, work with your fear, like sit with your fear. It's normal to be afraid. Like, it's normal to have fears. It's normal to have nerves. While all these are true, it doesn't really help you to see fear in a different light. Because when you start to see fear in a different light, you allow it to change your life in a very different way, right? It allow you to change your mindset when you look at fear. So now your initial reaction might be feeling fear, looking at fear, and be running in different directions and be like, oh my God, I don't wanna face fear. Like, fear is just so scary. Fear is this person that I don't wanna look at, that I don't wanna deal with. I don't even wanna look at that person. Right? But now if you look at fear and look at it as like your best friend, when fear pops up, oh, change is coming. Like, I am growing. Like, I am growing. How exciting it is to feel that you are growing in life, that you have so much more potential, and your skill sets are growing. Like, your confidence level is growing. Your capabilities are growing, right? The things that you're learning is growing as well. And like I mentioned a lot of times, I don't like to stay in my comfort zone, because I know that when I'm in my comfort zone, I don't grow at all. And when I don't grow, I stay stagnant, and life becomes so shitty because I'm stagnant. Because the whole purpose of life and the beauty of life is to just to be able to keep expanding your comfort zone and see how much more you can take, right? How much more discomfort you can take, how much more lessons that you can learn, because you can only learn lessons when you are out of your comfort zone, when you fail, or when you are just changing things in your life, because nothing changes when nothing changes. Right now, if you're in your comfort zone, nothing will ever change, right? You're comfortable with where you are. Your growth is very limited, because you can't really grow in an environment that you're so used to, right? So like I said, put yourself out there and know that when fear comes, when nerves starts coming, know that it's time to get excited. Okay, instead of feeling like, oh, I don't want fear, start to be like, oh my god, yes, like I am nervous as hell, yes, I am fearful, yes, but it also means I'm ready to grow. Okay, so this is kind of like the mindset shift that I want you guys to take away with you today. If there's anything that you need to take away from this podcast, I hope that this is like kind of like the thing that you want to start working on, the way you look at fear. Okay, because I know that I really hope that someone would have told me this concept way back, so that I would have done a lot of things that I could do. But at the same time, I know that, I needed to go through all these fears to be able to sit here with you today and let my perspective on fear, my shift of perspective on fear. And I needed to go through another level and another round of fear like last week to be able to come up with this concept and to be able to sit with myself and be like, okay, this is how I'm going to look at fear in the future, right? And I know that this is such a new concept that I'm so excited to share, because I feel like fear has stopped us so many times in our lives to not achieve the things that we want to achieve. And there are a lot of people, even for you, who might still be uncomfortable and who might still be holding yourself back because of the fear that you have, especially imposter syndrome, especially the fear of, how your peers would see you, right? I feel like a lot of people, we are very creative people in nature, right? We're just humans, we're on this earth just to create, but we hold a lot of our power and we hold a lot of our creativity back because we feel like others might judge us, right? We feel like we want to fit in the society and we don't want to stand out. But the truth is, everyone is meant to stand out in their own way. And can you imagine how beautiful the world is going to be if we all start to have that confidence to stand out and not be afraid of how people view us, and be able to contribute to making this society and making this world a much more pleasant and happy and creative place, right? Just think about it. Everyone living in their own element and just being themselves and not having to even fear how others view them. But like I mentioned, life may not be perfect all the time. So yeah, so this is just like my concept on fear, and I hope that you guys kind of take a little bit out of it. And when I mention about how fear builds your comfort zone, right? Like it expands your comfort zone, it allows you to grow more. It's because when I look back at the times that I was so afraid, that I was scared shitless, but decided to run into fear anyways, or decided to just plunge headfirst, or decided that maybe the universe just kind of forced me to accept fear, all these moments I have actually grown so much. So I'll give you an example, right? For those of you who know, I have actually gone to Silicon Valley for 1 year, San Francisco, to actually do my internship, and that was when I was 18. So you can imagine how young I was, 18, trying to navigate life in a total different country. Because mind you, my family, we were someone that actually travels a lot in the Asia country. Like, because my dad has this limiting belief and has this story around how Western culture or Western people are a little bit more racist. I'm not saying this is right. Okay, I'm not saying that he's right on this. And we have a lot of our back and forth on this topic, because I personally don't think it is this case. I personally feel like, there are such limited people who are racist, and especially at this day and age, there are a lot more people who are more open to, yeah, it's just racism is just, it's a thing, but at the same time, it's also not as common anymore, right? And I would say it's not something that I face. So yeah, that's just for context purposes. And we've traveled a lot of Asia countries. So that was my first time actually going out of Asia and actually living there for 1 year, living in the States for 1 year. And I think every single time that I tell this story, like everyone is like, oh my god, you're only 18, like you're so young. How would you know how to survive? It must have been tough. It is really tough because I did not know anything about the country. I did not know anything about the culture. I was so innocent in a sense, and also ignorant, right? I was just in this whole la la land of like, okay, yeah, it's the States. I'm just gonna enjoy myself and I'm just gonna complete this internship, blah blah blah. But reality hit me the moment I landed there, because like I tell you, I was ignorant. I didn't know I had to bring my visa there. Right now it sounds so stupid to me, because who wouldn't? Like you have your visa, you gotta bring it when you're actually going through customs. But I didn't bring my visa, and I had a lot of problems at the customs. There were a lot of unpleasant experiences that I had there. And then as time progressed, I got to learn that, oh, we actually do have something called the accent barrier. I like to call it the accent barrier, where it's so different. Like Singaporean accents and the American accent is so different that even the simplest task of ordering food, ordering takeout, or just speaking to the people there and getting my orders through, it's so hard. Like they couldn't understand me, I couldn't understand their slangs, and it was just a whole disaster. And for the longest period of time there, I think for the first few months, I felt so out of place. I felt so uncomfortable. I've cried many times because I just didn't know how else I was gonna navigate, like my life there. I had like what 11 more months to go, and I just didn't know how I was gonna do it, whether or not I was even gonna survive it. But it turns out to be the best decision of my life. To even have that experience in Silicon Valley is just like the best decision of my life, because 6 months in, all right, maybe probably around like 4 months in, I started to kind of tell myself that, okay, if I need to survive here, I put my survival instinct on, and I was like, okay, if I need to survive here, I gotta start learning. I gotta start picking things up. I gotta start adapting to things, right? And adapting to how they live life there. And when I like really ditch all my fears, because I didn't have time to be afraid. I didn't have time to be fearful. I don't know why, but I felt a lot of fears. Like, don't get me wrong, I was so scared. I was scared of every single thing. I was scared of going out alone at night. I was scared of going to the office. I was scared of my boss. I was scared of interacting with people. I was scared of how people are gonna view me. I was scared of so many things that I can list like a whole laundry list for you, but decided to just put it aside and be like, okay, you know what? I can't have time to be afraid of so much things. I need to just move on with life, and I need to learn. I need to grow. And that year, 2018, 2019 was the year that I grew so much. Like, I kid you not, up to date, I still feel like it's like the biggest growth I've ever seen in myself. Going from this really innocent girl and just, I don't know, like, I mean, she's not bad, but I've never actually expected her to grow into this version of me, to be sitting in front of this camera and actually starting a podcast, right? Because when she was growing 4 years ago, like, I started to see myself getting out of my comfort zone so much more. I started to create podcasts, no, not podcasts. I started to create YouTube content. I started to film a lot of my time there. I started to just put myself out there a little bit more, something that I would never ever do when or if I was still in Singapore. And this was one thing that I've always, kind of contributed my fear to, because this fear has really allowed me to do things that I've never done before. It Other than allowing me to be out of my comfort zone and grow, I doubled the growth, and I even went on to just do things that was crazy. Like, it was insane to me. Like, if you would tell like the maybe like 5 years back, myself, and be like, you're gonna be creating a podcast, you're gonna be creating YouTube, I tell you, she's gonna freak out and she's gonna be a hell no. Like, no way I'm gonna do that. Like, I'm not gonna put myself out there because I'm afraid of so much things. I'm afraid of how my peers are gonna see me. I'm afraid of not putting out quality content. I am afraid of being called a wannabe, right? But deep down, I know that this is something that I'm so passionate in, like creating content, putting myself out there, just doing stuff like that is something that I really feel so much passion for. But I didn't do it because I felt like people are gonna judge me. I felt like, the world is gonna go against me, like the world's gonna start crumble, and I don't want all that, right? I was afraid of all of this, and because I decided to just run with this fear, I grew so much. And I would say that every single time that I look back at this memory, I'm always so proud of how much I've grown, and I always tell people that literally these fears have actually saved my life. Because can you imagine if I were to still hold on to these fears and not allow them to make me grow and not see them as growing points, I would not be who I am today. Okay, so I would urge you guys again to look at your fears and allow them to push you forward instead of holding you back, because there's two choices that you can make, right? I always like to think of fear as this ladder. So you either climb this ladder and reach your goals, or you look at this ladder and you look back downwards and allow this ladder to kind of have this, I would say, like this point whereby it hinders your growth. it will constantly be telling you things like, oh, what if you fall backwards? Or what if you, I don't know, what if it breaks, right? And you have a lot of like this what ifs and this fear in you, and you just remain at the bottom of the ladder. You never ever want to grow. You never ever want to climb the ladder because you're afraid of what it might do to you. But if you look at that ladder, or fear in this case, and see it as like a stepping stone, and see it as a ladder to reach your goals, to get out of this well that you're in, then so much things are gonna happen. You're gonna see the other side of the wall, right? You're gonna see so much growth. You're gonna be so much happier. You're not gonna live life with regrets because you've done everything that you can and run with fear. Okay, so people who tell you that they are fearless, I don't think there is this word fearless in this world, because we are humans, we have fears, right? And fear sometimes they allow us to be safe, right? They want to keep us safe. So let's just say fear of fire, right? Like some people, like we know not to touch the fire with bare hands because it might burn us, right? So this is fear, and this fear keeps us safe. It keeps us not injured, right? So there are good things in fear. So I want you to use your emotional fears as like a good I would say a leverage for you in your life to keep allowing you to grow, to keep pushing you forward instead of holding you back. Okay, so I would say that at this current moment, you can decide for yourself whether or not you want to use fear as a growing point, or whether or not you want to use fear as something that just holds you back, or something that is constantly on your mind, and be like, oh my god, like this devil in your mind, and be like, you're afraid of this, like, so don't do that. Like, what if this happens, or what if people start judging you, what if we only have so much time on this earth. And if you're going to use majority of the time to sit on your fears and to allow fear to hold you back, then what are you going to do with the rest of the time that you have here, right? You're going to look back at your life at the end of, this lifetime, and be like, I feared so much. And are you gonna bring all your fears to your coffin and be like, okay, yeah, so, and be buried with fear? Because that's not how I want to be buried. Okay, I don't want to be buried with fears, because all these fears, if you're gonna carry it to your grave, then you I can tell that you're not gonna be able to look back at a lot of accomplishments in your life and be like, I'm so glad I did it. I was afraid, I was scared shitless, but I'm so glad I did it. Because right now I can tell you that I am at this stage whereby, looking back in life, I know that there were so many points in time that I was afraid, but I did it anyway, and I have never, 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 never ever regretted my decision. And this is one of them. Like I mentioned last week, I faced a lot of fears. Even up to today, this morning, I was still feeling all this fear and all these nerves. But I tell myself that one day I'm gonna look back at this current moment, this very moment, and know that I've grown again so much more. That my comfort zone has just grown bigger, right? Because I run with this fear. So whoever tells you to be fearless, just know that it's not possible. Okay, just know that fears are meant well. Okay, when you start to look at fears and know that they meant well in helping you grow, all you have to do is walk with fear. Okay, walk with fear so that fear can actually guide you to grow, to expand your comfort zone, and to really learn the lessons that you need to learn, and just be a better version of you. Okay, because like I mentioned, fear can do two things to you. They can break you, or they can actually spur your growth. So it's all up to you, and it all boils down to how you decide to look at things. Just like anything in life, it really depends on how you view certain things. It's a lot on our perspective on certain things. And there is no right or wrong in life. Everything that you think, everything that you tell yourself is right. Okay, because whatever that you tell yourself or tell your mind, it's gonna believe in you. That's the power that you hold. That's the power that your minds hold. It can either make or break you. So please allow it to help you. Okay, start feeding your mind with all these nuggets, golden nuggets, so that it can actually help to navigate your life. That it can actually help you to feel a lot more better, to know that it's okay to have fears, and to not look at it as something that is, oh, why do I have fear again? You're gonna always have fear. When new things start coming up, you're always gonna have fear. And guess what? When you start to grow your comfort zone, and when you start to grow in life, and when you start to face different things in life, experience different things in life, different fear starts coming up. Okay, like, or the same fear starts coming up again, because all these little triggers are just a reminder of you to really activate this side of you whereby you're like, okay, I'm ready to grow. Like, I'm afraid, yeah, but I'm ready to grow. I'm afraid, I'm nervous, I have all these nerves in my body. I shake it off because I'm ready to grow. Okay, I am so ready to grow. This is something that I keep telling myself every single morning. I'm afraid. Yes, I acknowledge it, but I'm ready to grow. I choose to see it differently. I choose to allow it to push me forward. So every single time that I see this, I feel better, right? For the start, when you say this, you might still be doubting yourself. But like I mentioned, a lot of times it boils down to your feelings. You really got to feel into what you're telling yourself before you can actually start to see all the manifestations come through, or before you can actually start to see yourself living the life that you want to live. Okay, because if you're saying things but you're not feeling it on like the emotional level, it's not and never gonna help you, right? Because our emotions are so strong. Whatever energy that we put out there, or whatever energy that we're vibrating on, your reality, your outside world is gonna be a reflection of it. Okay, so if deep down you're still afraid, but you're telling yourself that you're not afraid, trust me, a lot of things are gonna start trigger that fear, and you're still gonna feel this fear no matter what. Okay, words are not enough. As much as words of affirmations is something that I post a lot on our live seasons, but words of affirmations are not enough if you're not feeling it wholeheartedly. If you are not allowing this concept to sit in and be like, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to change. I'm ready to look at life in such a different perspective. Okay, you really gotta understand. This is something that I really, really hope that everyone can grasp, because life is not very complicated if you don't want it to. Okay, this is just basic things in life that when you start to accept the concepts, and when you start to really understand the concepts of life, you realize that your growth just spurs, right? Life change like 180, because you start to see life in a different perspective. And when you start to do that, changes happen because you change your mindset. Okay, so I would say that this is something that I kind of want to talk a lot about. Like, fear has been a concept that I'm so familiar with, and I'm pretty sure all of you are familiar with as well. So today I want you to look at your fears and understand where it's coming from. Acknowledge that it's normal to have fears, but the only difference is that now you decide to look at fear as something that spurs your growth. It's something that gets you excited. How about that? How about changing up your subconscious mind? How about changing up your subconscious reaction, right? Our reaction to everything matters, because it's not how you kind of react, but it's more of like how you respond to things, right? If you're always responding the same way when you face fears, nothing is gonna change. You're gonna still be afraid. You're gonna still be like, oh, fear, right? And I was like that, okay? But now it's so different. When I hear fear, when I hear nerves, like the bells just go ringing, and I'm like, okay, it's time to grow. It's time to grow. Like, I am out of my comfort zone. And it is like very, very, very aligned with my life goals, because my life goal is to be as uncomfortable as possible, as crazy as that sounds, because I know that when I am uncomfortable is when I get to grow, and when I am uncomfortable, I learn so much more, right? And I believe that whatever situation, uncomfortable situation that I'm put in, that the universe puts me in, first, I have the capability to grow through it. Second, it's there for a reason. And like I said, we grow. Okay, so different life seasons, different uncomfortable level, different growth zones, we grow together. Okay, I'm hoping all this makes sense to you. And I just kind of want to put this out there today, because I feel like fear is just something that is not talked about in the good light for a lot of people. And I just kind of want to encourage you to look at fear a little bit different today. So yeah, that's all I have for this episode. I hope that you enjoy episodes like that, and do let me know what you think about all these episodes. I would appreciate if you leave a review on wherever that you're listening to this, and I hope to see you in the next episode.